All right. Are we live right now?
We
Oh,
are
I see
not
it.
yet.
Oh, okay. It says live on Facebook on my side.
Yeah, it says live on Facebook, but I don't think we are yet. I'm looking.
Gotcha. So nobody picked their nose while we're on right now.
All right, it says we are live.
I'm sorry.
We are live.
All right. Awesome. Well, we'll give people a couple seconds for notifications and whatnot, and then we'll get going here. You know, could you have 10 years ago, could you have thought this is how things are going to go? You know, everybody looked forward to 2020 as what a year it's going to be. Well, it's going to be in the history books for sure, but maybe not how we all really wanted it to or expected it to. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, we'll get started. We've got a couple seconds before 6 Eastern. So welcome, whoever's joined us, either live and recorded later. I'm Alex Renneman, and I'm here with Mike Manypenny and Amy Summers, who are running for the 49th District House of Delegates. We're happy to have them on the program today, and we're happy to have you listening, because as we often say at Unleashed Tiger, when we're speaking out to you guys, this is a representative republic, and without a republic who is informed and engaged, it's not much of a republic. And how are you being represented? So these two folks here you see are vying for your representation at the State House. And we've taken some time, they've taken some time out of their busy schedule to sit down with us and cover some of the issues that are important to you. So we'll talk a little bit about the format. You know, we've reached out to the candidates, and they picked this time. It was perfect for them. But we didn't share lists of questions or those kind of things. Typically in Unleashed Tiger format, these are questions that came from you, the public. And so we have those questions set to ask the candidates. We'll give equal time, and we'll be fair and let one candidate go first and alternate as best we can. And we will. We will definitely expect, and I know we will with the class of these two individuals here, we'll expect a much better performance than what we've seen in some cases on the national level and other things where not really much benefit to any citizen. So I'm excited to get this going. At this point, I will say a little bit, those of you that may be tuning in are unfamiliar with Unleashed Tiger, we are a nonprofit based in Taylor County. And the reason we do these things is primarily, we've got 6 pillars that drive our organization, but this one being governance. And the reason we do this is to create transparency and engagement and accountability to our public officials, and hopes of a better government that can support us in a way that's needed for our community. And so this is something we started 10 plus years ago in interviewing candidates. Now it's a little bit new this year with COVID. Now we're doing remote, but even then you've asked us for years, for the last several elections, to have a gathering, a mutual gathering. And that's what we're going to do tonight. But it's not what you see as a typical debate. We're really doing a panel discussion. We feel like that's more valuable to the voters and the constituents. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So Mike, Amy, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
For sure. So we're going to start off with one of those softball questions. And Mike, the flip of the coin puts you first. The question is, what's a hobby or something new or something you could pull out of COVID that you were able to do maybe because of COVID or the pandemic? And I don't want to make light of the pandemic, obviously, and we'll get more into the heaviness of the pandemic in a moment. But what's something that you learned or a hobby you picked up or something you were able to do because of the pandemic, basically?
Well, I wouldn't say that I picked any new hobbies up or anything, but I have spent a lot more time walking my dogs through the woods because that's the best way to social distance right now.
There you go. That makes sense. Amy, how about you?
Well, Alex, my husband and I, are farmers, and we appreciate, growing our own beef, our own eggs, our own vegetables and all that. So in this whole process of the stores being empty and things like that, we were like, what else could we grow or learn to process, that kind of thing. So we had a milk cow, and we learned how to make butter. We learned how to make cottage cheese, some of those things. And a lot of the older people in our families, my mother, for example, too, as well, they all did this as kids. My husband did this, his family did as a kid. So we were making our own butter, making our own cottage cheese, learning some of those skills of times past. So it was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lots more outdoors and events and things that people maybe been reconnecting with family, and even though we can't necessarily connect with distant family, it's good. So I mentioned we're going to get into the heaviness of COVID, and we're not going to wait. We're going to jump right into it now. But I want to take a little bit of different angle on it. Obviously, you can look at COVID and the impact it's brought to the world, and certainly to the U.S. and our community in terms of, the school mess we've got going on and everything else. But I want to focus on what opportunities we might see within the COVID in our area. And so, is this the time? There's a dozen states or more that are looking at marijuana as a way to increase economics. We just saw a big donation from Brad Smith and WVU looking at how we can attract remote workers to West Virginia based on, maybe cities aren't so good for social distancing, folks are finding out. And so what opportunities do you see as a leader kind of coming in? What opportunities will you try to push forward so that West Virginia can make some strides in the midst of this pandemic? And Amy, I'll start that question with you.
Thank you, Alex. Some of the things I think we should start with are executive orders that were written by the governor to pull back certain type of activity. Let me give you an example, like telehealth. We have found that has just been gangbusters. It's really working well. People aren't having to get out of their homes. They're not having to put themselves at risk. They're getting the medical care they need. Well, a couple of years ago, we put some telehealth bills through, but it was pretty constrained. So the executive order has peeled that back and said that you can do it more easily. And we haven't seen any negative consequences from those pullbacks that I'm aware of. We're going to review that and then make those, the things that have been removed by executive order, make those law if we've seen no negative consequences. So that's one big opportunity for healthcare we can see. And I know you were talking about social distancing in a rural area and tourism as part of their, we've really beefed them up this year. And tourism is partnering, trying to figure out those remote workers that really enjoy being in the outdoors, trying to lure them here to our area.
Yeah, perfect. Mike, how about you?
Well, and I like Amy's comment about the telehealth, and that's really something that's we've been waiting for a long time. However, we still have a problem with internet access across our community. There are so many and underserved areas in the county and across West Virginia that can't participate in telehealth because of the lack of access for high-speed internet service. And so there's something that really is probably one of the top things that I really think needs to be focused on in West Virginia. But recreation is probably something that is, one of the things that we have going for us more than any other state. We've got Tiger Lake State Park, and it's still a jewel in the rough. We really could be expanding. I know that we just got a grant to maybe expand the lodge, but yeah, there's so much more that we can do with that lake and in the park and other areas for recreation. We need sports complexes for our youth to keep them away from drugs, as well as adults. There's a lot of adults that would probably like to participate in baseball or softball or soccer. So we really need to expand those types of opportunities and really embrace the community so we can come together as a community and play together as we work together.
Yeah, it makes sense. Mike, when you gave your answer, I had to check to make sure I wasn't sharing my notes because you went into broadband, which is exactly what I want to ask you about next. So we have been exposed. We've been railing about this being a virtual company located in West Virginia, trying to lure remote workers forever, but you just a little bit off the highway sometimes and boom, you've got nothing. And this remote, the virtual schooling is really exposed, I think, to every citizen, painfully, our lack of broadband access in West Virginia. And so I often lament, our couple cycles at this through the years, whether it was Telecommunications Act in the 90s or it was the BTOP program in the early 2000s, that all that money went to Verizon, then ultimately Frontier, and we've spent that, and here's what we've got. And now there's kind of some new rumblings. I'd like to ask you, what would you like to see, and what would you be willing to do if you were elected in order to improve the broadband across the state and certainly in our area?
Well, I'd like to see internet regulated like a public utility by the Public Service Commission, one. Second, I would like to see our communities own the infrastructure and create cooperatives so small business, private-public partnerships can create better internet access throughout our and underserved areas. The cooperatives are basically owned by the community. the infrastructure and the system. And so we can offer more affordable internet access to our citizens rather than having these monopolies like Frontier and Comcast that rack up the prices, and there's no competition that can come into the community to compete with them. And one of the things that I really had issue with when I was in the legislature before is they had a comparison between West Virginia and Pittsburgh. In West Virginia, it costs $500 to tie into a hub for a small company to tie into the fiber optic where per month. And in Pittsburgh, it costs $50 per month. So that's one of the reasons I really think that it needs to have some regulations as a public utility by the Public Service Commission.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Amy,
one
what
more
would be your-
thing.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, I may be out of time, but with all the money that the governor got from the federal government, he could be offering matching grants to our communities to start these type of cooperative internet programs.
Gotcha. Amy, what would be your perspective on that?
I like your idea, Mike, about the matching grant. For internet, what I think we have to do is like, where have we been and where did we go wrong? So in 2010 to 2013, we got this big grant from the federal government, just like we're going to again. So we have to make sure that we do it right. What we did before was we put all our chips on Verizon Frontier, like you said. And so we had this one provider, and they were to install internet to be like an internet highway, right? And then other companies could attach to that, but they didn't do that. They wouldn't let then the other companies attach. So it was a real disaster. So I think that we're going to get another $766 million from the feds. And we've got to make sure that there's a lot of oversight on that we don't pick one company, and that we keep an eye on every step of the way what they're doing, so we don't go down the wrong path. And since 2017, we were like, what other things are going wrong that we aren't getting the internet providers here, other than, yes, we're a rural location, and if you go out one little road, you might only pick up 3 families, and that's kind of cost prohibitive. So what we did is we've passed 5 bills, and one of them that Mike mentioned is about the formation of co-ops. So communities are allowed to form co-ops for broadband if they so choose. We also did these type of, we were finding that a road would go in and then it would have to be dug up for someone to lay something through there. So it's like a dig once opportunity, where if somebody's doing something on state property for a right of way, any of those kind of things, you lay the conduit down, it's already there for expansion in the future. And as you know, we did get CityNet is coming in here through one of those grants that you're talking about for 294 homes in Knoxville area. And it's going to internet in homes that have absolutely no service whatsoever. So we've got to start on that. That's exciting for us, but we have so much more to do. And I think the legislatures are saying, whether it be me or Mike, everybody's willing, I think, to commit monies to add to that 766 million from the federal government to get this to all the homes that we can.
Man, I hope we get it right this time, guys. However it is, we've really got to do it. Amy, a question still on the technology side. Digital rights. It's a conversation that's coming up. If all of us, you use a phone, you use we're over a computer right now. There are many corporations tracking what we do online and making a buku amount of money. We've got $1 trillion companies that are making money off all of us collectively. And there's a push in some circles about digital rights in terms of and some states are passing laws that make my data or any citizen's data their property and their right to do with that data as they please. And some states have created models for compensation for that data. And so if your data is used by a company, you have some means for compensation for that. Where do you stand on that? And is that something that you're looking into potentially pushing in the next legislature next legislative session to try to get in front of some of this massive ball rolling towards us around technology and privacy?
Absolutely, Alex, because if anyone's watched the documentary on Netflix called Social Dilemma, they have experts there from Twitter, Google, Facebook that have all left because they were very disappointed in the algorithms and how they collect the data and what it's become. And we see the same thing as technologies evolve in all different areas. Like in the last couple of years, we've had to write a lot of bills about drones, right? We didn't have drones, and all of a sudden we have drones, and they're peeking in people's windows, and they're doing those kind of things. I've had a couple constituents talk to me about, surveillance cameras. And what if it's not really in your yard, but it's shining on someone else's yard? Is that a privacy issue? All these new technologies, we do have to figure out what is okay and what is not okay, what we're signing up for, which we know we're all agreeing to this, even though we don't know that we are, or we don't want to, because it's all in the fine print. So maybe we change something there as well. But yes, definitely interested in reining in some of the use of our data.
Yeah. Mike?
Actually, I had already introduced that legislation back in, I don't remember if it was 2013 or 2014. Which would prohibit third-party sales of your internet history or activity, and unless you were compensated, and you could opt in or opt out of it. And I had Facebook, Google, and Yahoo showed up to my office and just about ripped me a new one. And of course, the legislation didn't go anywhere because they went and explained to all the other legislators of how this was going to have a negative impact on the internet and their business and on and on. And so it comes down to big money, and it's going to be tough to crack that nut when it comes to, getting these big companies to back off from trying to twist the arms of legislators to not pass this type of legislation. But yeah, I support that 1,000%.
Yeah. Well, we can't get the genie back in the bottle. So how do we at least direct it in a way that is worthwhile for everyone? Mike, this question's to you, and it transitions away from technology and talks about climate change. And there are strong attitudes towards climate change. We all know that. Some based in science, some not so much. But there's a lot of strong attitudes, and certainly in the state of West Virginia, where we have a lot of extraction jobs around coal and oil and gas. Whoop, are we still here? Can you hear me okay?
You're cutting out.
Give me
We're
one
here.
moment.
You're having a little trouble.
All right, let's try that again.
Can you start over?
Yep, I will. Give me one moment.
got
It's
about half of
2020. I appreciate your
Climate
patience.
change, we got that.
Yep. All right, let's see if this, one more change. Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your grace, 2020. All right, so Mike, I was just asking about climate change. People have strong opinions on this, and certainly in the state of West Virginia, where there's jobs involved around coal and oil and gas. But as a lawmaker, what do you plan to do, or what do you think should be done to either insulate us from some of those effects of climate change, or take advantage of climate changing and what opportunities we might have as a state?
That's really a tough question. Well, on a personal level, we just are looking at contracting with Solar Holler to put solar panels on our garage. And they have a program where they take your power bill and they figure out how much power you use per year. They spread it out over 12 months, and at a 2.5% interest loan that they can get, they can pretty much give you solar energy at about the same rate as you pay now for coal burning electricity. And so I don't think there's a whole lot we need to do. It's a personal preference, and now that solar has actually become competitive with coal and natural gas electricity, I think that we're on the right track, and it's going to be a personal choice for people to participate into the green revolution and do their part to cut carbon emissions. And there's a commercial solar plant going on somewhere down in southern West Virginia on an old coal mine that's supposed to start in the next 6 months, I think. So we're on the way. I don't know if there's anything we really need to do legislatively. I think it's more of a personal shift right now, and people are moving into that direction.
Okay, Amy?
I think the climate is always changing. I think that is a obvious statement. For West Virginia, as Mike stated about solar, we passed some legislation last year to enhance solar abilities in West Virginia. We have wind, we have solar, and we don't have hydroelectric at our dam, which we all keep pushing and pushing, but to no avail. But would be wonderful source of energy there. I do not agree with like the cap and trade type bill where we're buying our different things. I don't agree with that. But I think that for our energy, we need energy that's affordable and reliable. So that's going to take a balance of all of those different energy producing things that we have in our state.
Okay, perfect. I want to take a moment and remind those that are watching us live, if you have a question you want to ask of the candidates, just do your thing in there, depending on what platform you're on, and get a question to us, and we'll try to get that to the candidates. Kind of switching gears into just the leadership and the times. And Amy, this question's for you. How are you planning, or what have you already done or doing to help unite our community through your leadership? There's so much going on the national level, and even look at politics and the division that's happened. What is it you're planning on doing or have done that you can say, I'm trying to unite people to a common goal?
I think that you can see through Mike and I both, it's just about being respectful for others, being loving to other people, caring for other people, not divisive, like you see going on in some areas. I think our community is great. I think we come together when we need to. We love one another. There might be a few things here and there, but I find it very infrequent that you see those things occurring. So.
Okay, Mike?
Well, when I was in office, we really did our best to work across the aisle and reach across the aisle and work with the other party and try to find a consensus, and try to give a little and take a little. And that's the thing when, you have opposing sides, you need to try to find a common ground. And when you can find common ground, then everything becomes a little bit more easy and a little bit more comfortable working with the opposing side. Really, we have more things in common than we have of things that divide us. And we really need to start uniting behind those things rather than focusing on the things that is tearing this country apart, because a house divided upon itself cannot stand.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of people that get drawn into that bickering and fighting, but boy, that's a good statement. And so let me follow up on that. We're saying, hey, we want to unite. So what's something you appreciate about your opponent? Let's go there. What's something that you appreciate about Amy? Mike, we'll start with you.
Well, Amy and I have had some common issues that we've worked on. Industrial hemp was one of them. I got it passed in 2014. We made some modifications. I worked with her. I went down to the legislature. We sat down and we worked out some of the differences that we thought, could improve it for farmers, because, farmers have a hard time making ends meet now. And this was an opportunity to give them a new crop to, start growing and have a success and make a little bit more money. She reached out to me, was it last session or the session before, Amy? I forget, talking about the medical cannabis and what was going on, because we had the greenhouse down in Flemington, and whether we should allow out-of-state companies to come in when they passed this legislation 3 years ago. So really, it's a matter of what she said before. It's a matter of respect and being able to, work across the aisle and not, put our differences aside and work on the things that's going to help us as a state and a county to succeed.
Great. And Amy, what's something you appreciate about Mike?
Make sure I'm unmuted here.
Yeah.
Easy to work with. If, like I said, I had a question, if I ever have questions, I reach out to everybody all across the district. If there's a car dealer question or a, you know, there was a question about medical cannabis. I knew that he was involved with that. Just, I always look for my resources in our district, in the community, and talk to them. And he's easy to talk to. He would help me with anything. When I first started down there, I think if I'd had a question about just the role, I think he would have been cordial enough to even talk to me about that. So we definitely have different views about some issues, but we still respect each other. And I think that's really important.
Great. All right. I know that sounds silly, but there's people at certainly in leadership positions throughout our country that can't have that conversation that you guys just had, and I really appreciate it. Let's move to maybe doesn't feel so good, and that is all the unrest that's happening across the nation. And certainly you could throw COVID in there, but I want to specifically focus on the way we separate one another and then poke at each other, and really whether that's race, it's class, it's gender. There's all kinds of things going on they're a real problem. And certainly you can look at some of major cities in the race riots. Now in West Virginia, I guess as we categorize humans today and in the modern world, we're mostly white. I mean, we just are. But the fact is there are still those in our state that may be struggling with inequity. And when you start to break it down by class or even caste, if you want to go that far in terms of socioeconomic standards, the challenges we see in some of the other parts of the country are right here in West Virginia and right here in your district. So I would ask you, what is it that you plan to do or think needs to be done at a state level to help support and at least alleviate some of the class differentials or the race issues, things that might be plaguing our nation and certainly our area? And Amy, I'll start with you.
I think the best way to help every individual is education. If we can get all of our children educated and guide them for the future, if they need guidance, if they don't have that at home, they don't have the support system. And we've worked on several bills in the past few sessions. One of them is Bill 1. And what that does is it guides kids through high school then into what's the next step, because we're finding that there's a lot of, we used to always push kids to college, 4-year college. It just doesn't work. And there's so many trades and jobs that we need and we have available. So we are working with the West Virginia Development Office. What jobs do we need people in West Virginia? Because as you're aware, we have such workforce development issues, workforce participation issues. So trying to increase that workforce development. And so we are establishing where you have the kids in high school, and then well before they're done, what is your job? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? How can we get you that training? If you need a 2-year certificate, like, you know how First Energy, you can go to Fairmont State, and First Energy has a program where when you're done, you're a lineman. Like, get those things lined up for people so that they have a purpose and they feel valued and they have a way to provide for themselves. And I think that goes a long way in making people feel valued. One other thing, you were talking about the unrest. Do I still have time or not? Okay, we were talking about the unrest. And when we first had the George Floyd situation, I was like, wait a minute, there are police that have 17 infractions against them and they're still on the job. So what are we doing in West Virginia where if we have a bad cop, they're not still on the force with 17 infractions? So I immediately called a meeting with the Law Enforcement Professional Standards Group and found out what is the process in West Virginia that we go through so that we don't keep bad cops on the force. I think there's a few areas there we need to tweak, but in general, it's a really good framework to ensure that that's not happening in West Virginia.
Great. Mike?
Amy made some very good points, and I agree with those in regards to, cops that may have infractions that, have been out of line and trying to, do some type of a register to where we keep track of those bad officers to make sure that they're not hired at another law enforcement division. But I think it comes down to the haves and the have-nots, and we have more have-nots in a lot of places in West Virginia because of racial. There's some racial disparity, but more so there's socioeconomic problems because of lack of job diversity. And so we really need to diverse our economy and offer vocational educational programs more in our schools, instead of like pushing people into college. And one of the problems I see where we have the haves and the have-nots is a lot of people, you know, they get into a hopeless situation and they turn to drugs, and then they get into trouble and they get in with the law, and then they get a felony conviction. And one of the problems is you get a felony conviction, you have that for the rest of your life. And people don't like to hire anybody with a felony conviction. So these people have a difficult time getting back into the workforce. And so we need to give them a break. And if they're a non-violent, non-sexual felon, give them a chance to remove that felony conviction after 5 or 10 years, so they have an incentive to get back, you know, into society and become a productive member. We do have some issues where if they work as a towards volunteering in the community and stuff, I think those are the types of things that need to be brought into the context to try to help them move up in society. Give them a hand up rather than a handout.
Yep. So Mike, you mentioned the drug challenge. That's, again, I'm sure you don't have my notes, but the next question is for you, and it is around this drug epidemic. I mean, and we say around all the time, you know, COVID stole a lot from us in 2020, but unfortunately it didn't take this daggone epidemic away from a drug perspective. We still have it. It's still here. In some ways it may be worse. From a legislative standpoint, what can we do? What can you do? What do you plan to do to help us overcome this thing?
Well, when I was in office, we studied the substance abuse program, or the substance abuse problem, I'm sorry, in detail. And we found out in many states that the statistics showed that for every dollar we invested in prevention, diversion, and treatment gave us a $21 return on investment. And so we need to invest more in these programs to prevent people from getting onto drugs, to divert the drugs away so they don't have access to them, such as when people pass away and they, you know, have them in their medicine chests for family members, and then treatment. And we don't have long-term treatment. We don't have enough treatment beds, for one, but we haven't really embraced the long-term treatment programs which are necessary to get people off of substance abuse. We've embraced the 6 to 8, 10-week programs. And it's been shown that the programs that really work are the ones that are 6 to 9 months. It keeps them away from the problems that they were into. And then we need to train the families, or at least educate the families, to help keep their loved ones away from the environment that you know, got them into trouble in the first place. But we need to create opportunities for these people, and give them an incentive to get rid of that felony conviction so they can get back into the workforce and be a productive member of society.
All right, Amy, this drug epidemic, how do we fix it? What are you planning to do?
Thank you, Alex. And Mike, just so you know, we did do a second chances bill where you can get your record expunged. And actually, I've helped 2 people in our community with that already. So that's in the works, and beneficial, like you said, I think. Well, serving on the health committee, being the vice chair at one point before I was the majority leader, all we did was talk about drug addiction. What can we do? And I've got probably a list of 20 pages of different bills that we've been doing to chip away at this issue. And you know, we fix one thing and then something else pops up. That's the way it always is. But Mike was talking about prevention, and we do require that in schools now, which I don't like to tell the educators, you know, you must teach this, you must teach this. But on some things that involve life and death and these kids' everyday lives, I'm okay with saying we need a class, we need a discussion about prevention and substance abuse in schools. So that is a required thing. We also, we do have enough beds. We have 950 treatment beds according to DHHR, but like Mike said, as this has evolved, what is the most effective way to treat people? And we are thinking long-term is better for that. And there's a lot of short-term. So companies and different programs that provide these health services are going to have to start transitioning into longer time periods to make those successful changes. And I've noticed a lot of recovery houses setting up that are wonderful. I visited several in Charleston, just doing such a great job. So there are people really trying to make a difference, and we are seeing improvements, but of course not as quick as we'd like.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you, and Amy, this question's to you. If you're offered another term in this office, the voters put you back in, what is your number one outcome? What could we sit down 2 years from now, if you're elected, and say, we accomplished this? This is my number one thing. I know there's lots of things we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but what is that number one outcome that voters can look to?
Yeah, because I'd like to talk about roads and broadband, but I'm afraid with COVID, that's completely going to change the session next year for whoever's elected, because we're really going to have to do a review of our pandemic response and what that entails. I think that's going to take almost a whole session of hearing from the different players. I mean, there's obviously issues with Workforce West Virginia, with the unemployment. I mean, I think I helped hundreds of people just trying to get their unemployment, which it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't take having to reach out to your representative to do that. What's the issue? Why don't they answer their phone? I mean, it gets so frustrating for everybody. Why didn't we have an adequate stockpile of PPE? Why is it that the governors had us in an executive, in a state of emergency for how many months now? Like, is that okay without the legislature coming in? There's so many things that are going to have to take precedent this year, that'll take our time, that we must review and learn from as we're going through this, or at the tail end of it, however that comes to be. So that is to have a dedicated review of our pandemic response, our lessons learned, what can we do better, and what do we want to make sure we don't do again.
Great. Mike, how about your number one outcome?
Well, right now, COVID is the elephant in the room, and that's what everything is going to be surrounding. We need to make sure, that we have the personal protective gear necessary for our emergency response teams, our hospitals, our healthcare providers. We need to work and make sure that, since there are so many people that aren't working, that they don't lose their home because they can't afford to pay the rent. We need to make sure that people are being fed, that we keep our children fed. I'm sitting here in the warehouse of Project Hope Food Bank, which I founded more than 10 years ago. And if you look back here, the shelves are pretty bare. We used to use bingo to fund our food purchases, as well as to pay our rent. And so right now, there just isn't enough food available to supply the people in need in the county. One of the things with people having to work remote, there's a lot of people having to a lot of people having to work home remotely. So we really need to focus on the high-speed internet access. There's a lot of people that don't have childcare, that have children that are home 2 or 3 days a week. And so how are they supposed to take care of their kids and go to work? So we need to look at how we can provide childcare programs for a lot of these people that, have kids that don't have a care provider at home. I don't know what type of incentives maybe we can give to some of the employers. Maybe we just try to, create some bigger childcare facilities within our counties. I'm not sure what the answer is for that, but we do need to work on that.
Okay, Mike, we're on the home stretch now, guys. It's been great so far. I'm always, we often talk about hope and gratitude. Those are two pretty decent superpowers in getting through just about anything, including COVID and whatnot. And so I would ask you, in looking at West Virginia or our area here in the 49th district, what is it, two things, what is it you're most grateful and what is it that you have the most hope for in our state or our area?
Well, I'm grateful for all of the friends and neighbors that I have that are just wonderful people. I mean, I came into Taylor County over 20 years ago, and everybody has just treated me like I've been here for my entire life, and I love them all. I mean, my friends and neighbors, they're there for me if I need them. I'm there in any event that they might need. But I'm grateful for the community that we live in. Everything that it has to offer. We've got great recreation. We've got good roads. We've got clean air, clean water, and wonderful people. And what I'm hopeful for is that we can continue on that track and continue to put our differences aside and unite as a community rather than focus on the things that tear us apart.
Perfect. Amy, gratitude and a hope.
Gratitude, just like Mike said, I'm so grateful for the people here. That's what makes me want to be here, is the people. Hopeful that we have seen great strides in our economy here in West Virginia. We're starting to see some growth despite this horrible pandemic. We're stable. I'm seeing big growth areas starting to occur. I'm hopeful that that'll start expanding into our area. Taylor County is desperately needing some job growth in our area. I know our economic development group is trying to lure people here, but I think the policies are good. The regulations are improving. We're still keeping our water safe, our air safe, all those kind of things. So it's just, I'm hopeful people are going to see this state for what we see it as. And with Virgin Hyperloop coming to Tucker County, I mean, of all places, coming to an abandoned strip mine in Tucker County because they needed 7 miles of straight ground to test their product. I mean, that's wonderful. That is a huge company. They're going to bring lots of construction and some jobs with them. As one comes, we've got John Chambers, we've got Brad Smith. We have all these people that have been from West Virginia, that have ventured out, that now want to come back and help us excel like other places in the nation. So very hopeful for that.
Perfect. So as is customary on this program, we always give the candidates the last word. And so Amy, I'll have you go first. And what is it that you want to tell the people of the 49th district?
I want to thank the people from the 49th district for electing me and allowing me to serve you for the past 6 years. I have enjoyed it. I love helping people. That's why I became a nurse, and I found a good fit in this as well. You can help a lot of different people through this. I would be honored to have your vote on November 3rd so we can keep moving West Virginia in a good direction.
Perfect. Mike, your last word.
I think, like I've said before, I really truly believe you only get as much out of the community as you put into it. And that's one of the reasons why I really love and enjoy, community development and community programs such as the food bank that we founded here more than 10 years ago. We opened up the Tiger Valley Child Advocacy Center, which I don't think is functioning anymore. That was part of the Family Resource Network, and I think that they moved all of that up to Preston County. But I just love working in the community as an advocate for the people and try to fight for those that don't have a voice. And if anybody has any questions or has input, I'm always open. My door's open. My phone is on my Facebook account. Anybody can call me anytime. So if you have questions or comments, get a hold of me or email me.
Great. All right. Mike Manypenny, Amy Summers, both running for House of Delegates, 49th District. Really, this is how it's done, right? This is a template. You guys were high class. I appreciate the engagement going into these questions. To the voters out there, hopefully this was a benefit to you. If we didn't get to your question, I guarantee you every candidate I ever talk to, and I always ask, what do you want? They want input. They want people to reach out to them. So these two are not hard to find. They're out there on social media and other avenues. So reach out to them if you have additional questions or anything you'd like to know about their candidacy or their plans for a potential term. So again, thank you all. And please get out and vote, be an informed voter. We need that for this republic, and be safe and all that comes with it in 2020. But again, Amy, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye.